Good evening. Welcome to another episode of Cinema and Chat with Amita. I need to go on mute for 2 3 seconds because the electricity board is making an announcement here about a power cut. So let's be mute for 2 seconds. These are some of the challenges we have. I think there will be a special power cut in our area tomorrow. So probably the electricity board is making an announcement. I don't know whether you heard it or not. So anyway, this is how we live in Sri Lanka now, with all the challenges. So uh, let me talk about this show. I started this show little more than 75 weeks ago. And then what happened? Now I have done 74 LinkedIn lives in Sri Lanka. This is the Sri Lanka's longest running LinkedIn live talk show, as well as this is the first LinkedIn live talk show. I know some of the talk shows that started along with rolling out of LinkedIn Live in Sri Lanka. There have a few others who started, but then I think eventually for various reasons they have stopped. Even I had to take a pause for about 3 months because we had long power cuts. Most of the time, my guests couldn't come into the show. So, uh, however, once the power cuts were somewhat settled, I started back, and today's 75th episode. Consistency is the game when it comes to social media. And I've been bringing guests, and whenever it's not possible to bring a guest, I used to go solo. So, talking about myself, I'm an executive coach. I love coaching CEOs, the C-suite, and I help organizations and individuals when it comes to the personal branding strategies of their C-suite. Again, I help organizations when it comes to B2B sales. So likewise, I play many roles, and sometimes I have to help organizations with their LinkedIn pages as well. And then with this LinkedIn Live talk show, I used to bring an expert here, and we covered various different topics over a period of 1 year plus. And today, uh, I'm going to talk about a very specific topic: the role of a director in a private limited company. And then why this topic? With the economic crisis, we saw a lot of professionals. Sometimes they lost their jobs. A lot of people wanted to start a business, wanted to become entrepreneurs, register a company, and then bring US dollars to the country. So without a legal background, without having a legal entity, you can't do that. Especially if you are going to, export something, import something, you have to have that a legal entity. It's not that you are going to buy some coconuts and sell it somewhere and make a buck out of it. So this is going to be more serious stuff. So, and I myself have gone through some tough times with my partners and other directors over a period of time, making mistakes, informing and running companies. So I thought it is a good topic to talk about. It's a right time. People used to ask a lot of questions, but at the same time, we need to bring an expert on the subject. I'm not an expert on the subject. So I decided to bring uh, a legal professional to the show. So let's welcome Dinushka Medagoda. Good evening to you.
Good evening, Amita.
How are you
How
doing
are you?
today? Yeah, great. Thank you so very much for accepting my invitation on behalf of the audience. I'm sure they have a lot of questions to ask you.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be here and to
Yeah,
discuss some insightful thoughts about it.
yeah. So, uh, welcome to the show, and I like to welcome everyone who is joining us from all three platforms. This is live on LinkedIn, live on Facebook, and also it is live on YouTube as well. So, there's a lot to talk about Dinushka, but he's a attorney at law, and he's also the managing partner of ELO Chambers. So only those two I will mention for the moment, but I'm going to dig little deeper into him and his interest, all that after a while. So let's say good evening to few of our friends who have joined. I can see 30 plus on my other phone who have joined. But let's say good evening to Anuradha. All the best, Amita. Timely, valid topic. I know. And then we have Special Security Group Sri Lanka says good. We have a LinkedIn user who says good evening, Amita. Interesting topic today. And then we also have Navalka. Navalka, great to see you, Amita. Your guidance and practical selling as well, professional marketing helped us to apply in real scenarios. Yeah, but today it's going to be more or less legal aspect of marketing and business. We also have Tarindu Deshan. Appreciate this initiative. Hi, Tarindu. Good evening. Thank you for joining. Throw all the legal. When I say legal, don't bring in, all the other things. We are not going to talk about anything criminal here. It's all about, let me repeat the topic again, the role of a director in a private limited company. So if you are thinking about starting a company, if you're already running a business and you are a director and you never paid attention to those things, it's time that you may ask us. When I say us, ask Dinushka a few questions. So Dinushka, my first question to you, let's not be very serious, let's start with yourself. So how did you get into law? Like, I'm sure you did your A levels and then there would have been other options available, right? Whether you had a passion towards law or whether it's your family, what made you become a lawyer?
It's like mixed reasons that made me a lawyer. Uh, I come from a legal background family. Like my father is a lawyer, and that helped me to start kind of thinking to be a lawyer as well. But to be very frank, there were moments on. I mean, when I was doing finals at the law college, I didn't want to complete my finals. So I was keen on starting business, and it was something like the legal was not that serious for me at that time. So now I was like doing my another sort of a management degree, University of Colombo. So I was
Wow.
like more towards loving the management aspect than the legal aspect. So I was specialized on HR, human resources management. And eventually I started my career as a lawyer in criminal. It's strange where I'm doing today right now. So I was in criminal appeals, and then I moved to customs inquiry, custom related matters, and finally I felt like I'm good in documentation, and I prefer the legal aspects of corporate governance. So that's how I ended up my starting from somewhere completely different from where I'm today. It's a strange journey.
But for me, law is law, whether it is criminal or whatever. I'm a ordinary person, so I see you. Okay, there's a lawyer in front of me, so I have to watch my mouth, no. Hmm? Okay, we have a few friends here. I think we took Tarindu. He says appreciate the initiative. We have our good friend Sajivan. Hi, Amit and Dinushka.
Hi, Sajid.
Interest. Yeah, interesting topic indeed. He says, yeah, thank you. And we also have Gayanidi Alvis, someone who is in the forefront of logistics and supply chain management and taking Sri Lanka into the world. Gayani, thank you so much for joining us. She was one of the guests in my show, helping the audience to know more about what she does and how it helps everybody. So quite a good audience today. An interesting topic. So my second question, I know how you became a lawyer. Now, what are your specialization today? And I know you told me that you went around and eventually landed in this part of it. But what exactly do you do?
So basically, we mainly specialize on corporate governance aspect, and mainly because I'm coming from a bit of a, I personally interest in technology, so I engage in certain technological development products. So it's my interest learning about technological development like AI tools. I personally test certain new technologies. So So my specialization is also like towards corporate governance aspect. The secretary, I have a secretary, an intellectual property firm. So basically, we does corporate governance and company secretarial and intellectual property services. Those are three main areas that we engage. So, but my interested area out of all would be the technology. So basically, we assist a lot of IT companies in terms of their governance aspects, since a lot of compliances are required. So that's one of our key strength also. We are focusing on that key. A lot of new developments are coming, like the personal data protection regulation also will be enacted in soon, and GDPR compliances. We are trying to see sort of a more of IT-based companies to make as of exports. So I think those are the areas we are focusing and we are trying catering as well.
Yeah, I think, yeah, it's going to help the companies who are actually trying to go overseas or export. I think that area is very much connected to technology.
Yeah.
Just one question, like, with regard to technology, uh, how far have we advanced, or how far are we behind? Or is there a lot to do?
I think as a country we have certain framework. I mean, to be very frank, we have Electronic Transaction Act, which enables electronic communication, cross-border communication, and we have a solid legal framework. Unfortunately, it's that bureaucracy and people are unaware of this infrastructure, and we have solid. It's about we require certain infrastructure levels. For example, we have a personal data protection act now, but it take time for to implement that certain provisions. So I
Yeah,
am of the belief we have a good technological framework, and I strongly believe in technology will simplify a lot of work. It
true.
simplifies work, and that's the efficiency of the economy. So
Exactly.
I'm
Yeah.
completely want to see AI lawyers, AI driven chatbots, which I'm really working on in my back of some projects. So those are things I
Wow.
think future is looking forward.
Okay. At least we have QR codes now.
Yeah, that works. Even
Yeah,
simple
it works,
technologies,
you know.
it really works.
Yeah.
So we have a framework. I think the way the way the economy works, I mean, it's like when as organization like companies like more they try to incorporate their existing legal provisions like Electronic Transaction Act, which is prevail in Sri Lanka. So they can use a lot of people are unaware. Emails is a valid form of a contract. So you don't
Oh,
need to be physically be there. I mean, out of topic, since I'm just telling you,
yeah.
you can use emails as a valid form of contracts
So
as
it's
long
it's
as
valid under Sri Lankan legal
yes,
system.
yes.
Okay.
So the burden is
That's
upon the party who disclaim. For example, if I want to say I'm not the sender, I have to prove that it's not my email. So it's
okay.
it's so favorable for the business community. So it's
Of
commercial
course.
transactions. So we can use it. I mean, hope that people will use it. And
Yeah, Dinshuka, I can imagine, due to the lack of awareness, I'm sure the business community is going through a lot, because simply they don't know that an email can act as a contract device. Yeah,
yeah,
amazing. I think we need to have a separate discussion on that on a different day. Why not?
lovely,
Okay.
lovely.
So, okay, now I have my set of questions where
Okay.
it'll directly go into the role of a director of a company. But before that, let's welcome few others who have joined the show. We have Yashoda, an interesting topic, and then we have Shehan, good initiative, interesting, and I think we have Komudita. I just start my private limited company few months earlier. A lot to learn from this. Thanks in advance. Okay. I hope there won't be any surprises for you, Komodita. But let's learn from this gentleman. Even I'm going to learn a lot. So, uh, can you explain who is a director and what is the director's role in a company?
So basically, I tried not to be technical because
Please.
legal is anyway technical. I want to like give some simple words.
Okay.
Think a director is a person who manages the business. Manage in the sense a responsible person, a director responsible for the company because Company is a separate entity, which is like it's not a natural person. When there is a natural person's works, you need to have a responsible party. So director,
True.
if you are a director, remember it is not an entitlement. It's a pure responsibility. It's a it's a shoe that you have to be mindful of yourself. So that is a director. And
Okay.
the second question is the role of the director, right?
Yes.
It's strange to say a director's role are to act in good faith. Now, don't ask me what is good faith. There's a very detailed definition. The first
Yes.
is to act in good faith,
Yeah.
and also to look after the best interests of the company. Now, what is the best interest of the company is subjective, but one can question the fact. What is best interest of the company?
Yeah.
The third is to act the standard of care. Like you have to be careful. Like you have to look for diligence, um, care of the work that you do, right? And you have to be skillful of doing it. So standard of care is required. And third is that you need to be comply. This is the most important aspect. The first two is basically it's like a general definition to say good faith, best interest. Like we come that later.
Yeah.
But you are responsible, whether you like it or not, to comply to the company's act and to the article of association. Like article of association is like a book that you have to agree all these terms and conditions. Like that's like
Yes.
the constitution of your company. So those are three things I would say in general. You need to, as a that's your role, as your duty to make sure. Now, when you're performing your duties, so with the company's act is specific. Like you can't say I don't know about it, I was not aware of it, because it says, look, your duty is to make sure you comply to the Companies Act and the Article of Association. So whoever who directors who are listening to it, you have to read your Article of Association first, right? And because it's like few pages, like 21 page or less than that. If you don't know where the Article of Association means, you have to ask your secretaries and say, look, I won't read my Article of Association because it's my responsibility to know what Article of Association is. So
Guess.
then
Guess.
the
A lot
second
of
question is you
company.
have to read the Companies Act also.
Guess lot of company secretaries are going to get a lot of calls today from directors. Hey, can I have a reprint of the articles of association?
Yes. So,
Okay.
if I may, I mean,
Yeah.
if I explain certain stuff, I mean, like, the
Please.
act of good faith, although it's a very different yardstick, how faithful you are to certain decisions. This is what the court will look into. Like, you are a director, you are managed in the company. So, you are in the decision making of the company. Now, I'll give an example.
Please.
You deduct tax, you are basically deducting tax. You have a responsibility to pay the government.
Yes.
Are you acting in good faith? You have employees. You deduct EPF, ETF. Can you take yours as yours? Good faith.
Mm,
Because this faith and statutory obligation you have to look into. So, like you have to say, look, I took this because if I'm a statutory provision, I have to make sure that I'm paying these EPF, ETF deductions to our employees and respective deductions to be paid. Likewise, those are the actions of standard of care. You have to be careful. Like you have to make some standard of care based on your skills, right? Now, good faith is where you have to make sure that you are faithful, like you are making right choices, knowing that it's basically fair for a person outside to see, look, he's working on a fair basis. He is good faith. So it's a very subjective matter, but when it comes to rights of shareholders, this can be explained. One can say a person basically suppress. Assume that Amita, we have a director who basically will not disclose their interest to their matters. He wants
mm,
to bring one of his known party to the company, want to give his vehicle, but doesn't say that it's vehicle so that he's benefiting. So that's whether he approves it, then whether he acted on good faith. That's a question. But one can prove with action. So it's a very different framework. So you have to say I act in good faith, and it's the best interest of the company. So it's not the best
actually.
interest of me as a director. My
Yeah.
focus is I work for this company, which is not a natural person, which is an entity, a separate entity, and am I doing the best interest? So these are questions listeners like should ask from themselves when making their decisions.
True.
And the most important part, I said, statutory compliances, which I'll come back. I mean, I think we have a couple of questions. Now, whether
Yes.
we like it or not, it doesn't make you an excuse. Ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So you have to comply. Otherwise, you are going to be subjected to certain obligations, criminal
Yeah.
obligations.
Yeah. So here you are. We also talk about the role of a director, right? So I can't say my HR manager have not been able to send the EPF, ETF to the labor department, and I'm the director. So is it my responsibility or is it the HR manager's responsibility? Isn't it?
Finally, it will boils down to the directors.
Director. So director is
Lot there's a
responsible.
misconception. There's a misconception of it. I think we have to answer this who's a shareholder question, right? A lot
Yes.
of people
Yes.
think, I am basically in my concept like shareholder and director. I'm not a shareholder. I'm a director who is a shareholder. Like this concept, like where my responsibility stays, that's a
Yeah.
bit of a lot of misconception is there.
Gray area actually,
It's a very
so
great. Yeah,
sometimes maybe I'm joining somebody as a director, let's say because I'm good in sales or marketing, so I take over that domain. By being in that company, I'm a director now, I'm the sales director for an example,
yeah,
right? But I'm a director of the company and I'm not a shareholder, so I may not worry about whether we are paying taxes, whether we are paying EPF, ETF, because looks like my responsibility is to look after sales and marketing, but looks like I'm responsible.
of course. So you have to be very much careful when you are a director of a company and you're not being a shareholder of the company, because your rights as a shareholder is different from a right of a director and duties of a director. This can be same person, but your duty is going to be different. Now,
Okay.
when you join as a director of a company as a sales director, unless you given a special appointment as non-executive and your liabilities towards decision is being prevented, like you are being basically excluded from decision making, and you are basically not responsible of certain extent, you are going to be considered to be an executive director. So always, if Amit, you are considering you as like you are being expert. Like if someone calls you, you have to ask, look, what is my service agreement, right? But then again, in Sri Lanka, we you file Form 18, which is the consent to be director. So what you do is you don't say that I'm a non-executive or independent. You say I'm a director of the company. I'm consenting to be a director. I'm saying I'm not disqualified to be a director. So you are a director. So
Okay.
you have to be mindful. You because when you are a director, you are responsible for the affairs of the company, and the direct board of directors gets the power. Like the board get the power, and it's gonna be boils down to the directors, and directors exercise their powers. So this is how the Companies Act been drafted. So the management will be handled responsible by the directors. The management decisions will be taken by the board of directors, and they are the responsible people. So
Okay. So I think I'm going to come back to the shareholder director question little later. But before that, I would like to ask you the types of directors. Like since you also mentioned this non-executive director, executive director, managing director, right?
right,
There's a whole lot of confusion over there, right? Can
right.
you explain the types?
So basically, the Companies Act does not categorically defines the types of directors. So it's a practically like for purpose of corporate governance. Like in Sri Lanka, the corporate governance is very less used in private organization. The reason is most of the time the directors are the shareholders. Shareholders are the directors. But in a public or the corporate level, which is a high level of companies want to see corporate governance. So they want to see how the owners, for the shareholders, are giving powers to directors so that they're going to be have a check and balance system. So the corporate governance concepts makes to get a lot of experienced people to the board of directors. For that purposes, there are types of directors that was created for the ease of making a corporate governance practice, enable environment. One would be independent directors. For example, they will be independent and they will be non-executive. So their service level says that agreement is that they are independently providing certain insightful experience, decisions. to the board to make up good decisions. And so one is independent, one is non-executive. Non-executive is where you don't have the executive powers of decision making.
Hours.
So
Yeah.
they work for the board. They will be working on certain committees. They will be making certain decisions, but their level of executive powers are less. Right? There's other people like independent, like they are independently making certain decisions. So independent directors. So they're going to be very independently making certain decisions. And there's something called alternative directors. So the alternative directors is where you basically appoint someone for a short period of time in your absence to behave, like act upon you, right? So the so alternative director basically is not a is a separate individual going to be working there, but works on behalf of another principal director. And you can name whatever the, like we have sleeping directors. You can There is a director that does not do any engage of services. Like they are basically there for the paperwork. But one key aspect is this. So if you're a small or if you're focusing on the private image companies, so unless otherwise specifically given by the article of association and the service level agreement, you have to be considered to be a executive director. So this is something I have seen, like a lot of people are blaming and claiming about their issues, and then when we really knows about the details, actually they're not shareholders. They have been taking responsibilities of other people's business, and they are taking the burden. So it's a very key aspect that you should know what is your duty as a shareholder, as a director, and whether are you a shareholder of the company. Because if you are not a shareholder of the company, you are taking someone else's burden.
Okay, great. Now, since we are hovering around this question about shareholders and the directors, I know this might look silly, but then can I be the shareholder and at the same time, can I be the director? Let's say we have a company, three directors, three shareholders. Can it be a situation?
Yes, as per the Companies Act, private limited companies you have to have mandatorily minimum one director. So that same director can be the 100% shareholder as well.
Okay.
And there is no restriction of being a foreigner being appointed as a director in Sri Lanka. There's no restriction at all. So
Okay.
so even that sense, it says that you can be a director, single shareholder. And that same shareholder doesn't require to be the director also. Your director role is completely different from shareholding. So Mr. A be a shareholder, but Mr. B and C can be the directors. Who is responsible? B and C is responsible as directors. A as a shareholder is entitled to the dividends, the bonuses, the capital gain, everything. The shareholders are the one who are finally ultimate control of the business. Their responsibility. I had asked question. What is their responsibility as a shareholder? Their responsibilities are very minimum. Actually, it's the what defines a company is a private limited company. So it says it's owned by private people, the shareholders. It doesn't mention about the directors. It owned among private shareholders, and it is limited to the capital that they contributed. So if you
Mm.
ask what is the obligation of a shareholder, look, I as a shareholder invested the money. Something goes wrong, sorry, I have invested. That's my responsibility. But the director is not the case. Directors has to make sure EPS, EPF, EDV is paid, all the dues are paid, financial statements are done. That's their duty of the directors. Shareholders, okay, annually get the dividends, get the benefits of everything. So the shareholders take the sweet aspect of thing, but they're the risk takers. Ultimately, if a business goes bust, shareholders will lose their money,
Yeah.
but the directors responsible to clear the mess.
Okay. Very clear. I mean, I love the way you explain this with the right kind of examples. So let's go back again, like the appointments or, the process of appointing directors, what's the procedure?
So basically, at the time of incorporation, details of people who listed themselves and the consent given at the form in the form one will be initially the directors, and they are basically consenting. That's what I'm saying. You have to consent. Like, then you can't say I was not aware. You are
Okay.
consenting. Say I want to be a director. I know my responsibility. I want to be director. Second, I say I'm not disqualified also. Then you can't later say I'm not qualified also. So you say give a consent. Say by a form called Form 18. I'm qualified. I love to be a part of a director. I love this responsibility which I mentioned. Make me a director. That's the first option. The second option is where you wanted to have after that. You have the incorporations.
Yeah.
Then that is where you have to pass the ordinary resolution at them as directors. So it's like then again they have to give a consent. So whenever there is a director, you have to file this consent form 18, and initially the director's details will be available in the form 1, and whenever subsequent time it will be available in the form 20. So if you are a director, if you wanted to know whether I'm a director or not, this is very important. A lot of people think by by looking at a paper that they have submitted, like I gave my resignations to board of directors, now I'm no longer director. No, you have to make sure that you obtain form 20, because form 20 is where you say I resign and it is registered at the register of companies. Unless it is registered, you will be considered as a director. So your responsibility stops where the register of companies accept your form 20. So you make sure that whoever who wants to consider like themselves like they are not in a safe place, right? Elected to resign, they must make sure that as like appointed, resign, make sure that they obtain form 20. I think that's very important. Especially a lot of people assuming that they are no longer company, but actually they are still the directors of the company.
Yeah. You think, okay, I have given my resignation, so I'm done. But then you haven't got the Form 20,
Yeah.
yeah, to confirm it. Okay, interesting. I can see how you, when you know, you can avoid a lot of trouble.
Yes, exactly, exactly.
Yeah.
It's very important. I mean, it's very important. Like you make it documented, everything. Especially the directors, I think we say the role as a duty of care is that every decision that you took, you have to make sure that you have communicated it properly. I see a lot of young entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka does not care about this legal framework. They think, why should I worry about this? My focus is for the business. But yes, but focus is for the business. But the law will not consider whether you are a startup or a seasoned entrepreneur or seasoned business. Law will consider you are a director of the company. You are responsible. So when you are a startup or a young entrepreneur who wants to get into business, spend some time learning about law. Listen to like talk shows like this, get to know about what's my rights and responsibilities, and how should I work as a professionally as a director, because you have a standard of care is there. So it's a very important, like for example, I can't say I don't know. I mean, that's the biggest challenge. Like you can't go to courts and say, look, I don't know, when you are a graduate, or you can't say you don't know. You're supposed to know.
Yes. And you have put your signature.
Yes, consented.
Okay, so we have few others. We have Metsara, he's one of the top resume writers in the country, very informative discussion. And we have Nishanka, he's the founder of Zero Plastic Movement in Sri Lanka, very important and informative discussion. Thank you very much uh, for joining. Like you can see people with different interests, different backgrounds are listening to this, joining with us, because whether you like it or not, it would be a part of your business. Yeah, something that you can never ignore. So you you told me a good point, like the startup owners or the founders and the young entrepreneurs get into trouble sometimes because they simply ignore these facts, the legal aspect of a business. So now we have the private limited companies, we have the sole proprietorships and the partnerships, and then we have the PLC. uh, so uh, I'm sure there's more trouble in the startup side, or where young. So sometimes you start the business with your friend, known parties. So okay, I'll put the signature. You just go ahead, isn't it? You agree with me? I'm sure when it comes to a PLC or a large entity, the compliance are more serious. Documentation is more serious. There's a lot of explanation. What do you say about that?
I see that. I'll give you a small clarification. I mean, the question that you have raised also, which says
Yeah.
there are different types of entities.
Okay.
Now, the first sole proprietorships and the partnerships, your liability is not limited. You being the owner, I told you the private limited companies, the owner is basically safe, like he's safe.
Yes.
But the first two options, you are not safe. Like your liability is not limited. So sole proprietorship and the partnership, both of those organizations as entities are not considered to be separate legal entities. So your liability is not limited. But when it comes to private companies, is where you are basically trying to limit your liability and you're trying to make sure that your formalities are met. But when it comes to the public limited companies, they are very concerned because they have to comply with certain level of strict rules and regulations.
True.
I think there's an attitude requirement, like change of attitude requirement, because we all know, like I've been part of certain workshops and things, how young entrepreneurs are thinking like they startups is an earn thing. Like you have to work hard to that, right? So one thing I realize is startups the compliance are very less because they think it's not relevant.
Mm.
But organizations which actually went through sort of structural works, which have a high workflow, workforce, and they have a bit of a force that actually requires compliance, try to tend to comply to this rule because they know if something goes wrong, one simple mistake can lead to a bit of a disastrous point. So I
True.
think it's a require attitude change also because I've seen some small organizations which are like partnerships doing very well. For me, what I notice is this experience, because you as an entrepreneur, you as a person who engage in the business should have the discipline of how you conduct your business. So for me, what I realize is it's a personal choice to know law and try to take comply to those requirements. It's going to safeguard. Law is something that protect you. It's not something going to harm you. It's going to protect you. So I think that kind of a attitude issue what I have personally noticed because a lot of startup concerns they don't care about and value about the legal framework, and more importantly, established organizations see the value and they know the pain of not being compliant to the laws. So because of the experience, only the startups could turn themselves with bitter experience, hard
True.
time. They train, and I always believe business fail, but entrepreneurs won't fail. That's my belief. So I've seen people fail, but then they build businesses. I mean, we are always helping those kind of businesses in the ecosystem. And that's
Yeah.
what my personal feeling and experience for the last couple
Super,
of years.
super explanation, Dinushka. Thank you very much. I'm so glad that I brought you here. Here we have a comment from Gayane. You explained this in a layman's term, which is useful. Many don't know these nitty-gritties. Yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like, I'm sure there are a lot of people must be there scratching their head. Oh my God, I didn't know this. So I have an additional question. Now, the same person could become directors in 2 or 3 companies where these entities are not connected. Uh, what's the legal implication over there?
If you are a director of a separate companies, it's going to be a separate responsible for that company only.
Okay.
So, for example, each company considered to be a separate entity. If you are a director of the company, you have to make sure that you basically act in good faith to that company, act in good care, acted for the best interest of the company, make some decisions. You take useful advice from the people. So those are responsibilities of that company and that director. So you have multiple companies means you are responsible separately for those companies. So each company is a separate entity. There is no correlation or no connectivity between them. I'll tell you this. When I told you about this, how much you have to be the best interest of the company, the
Yes.
law says at a point, assume that you've been appointed by a holding company. Basically, it can be a holding company. Shareholder is not an individual. A situation where the
Yes.
company is fully owned by another company. So
Yes.
it's going to be separately shareholders and another company. Even in that context, even you being appointed by another company, your best interest should be for the company that you are working. Unless the
Mm.
article of association says you are allowed to look after the interests of the holding company.
holding company.
You see
Okay.
how important it is that your duty towards the company, the duty towards the company that you are consented. Say, I consent, I'm happy to be part of this responsibility so that I take best interest for the company. So this best interest is a very different thing. Whatever you do, if something goes wrong, question will ask: did you work for the best interest? Did you act in good faith? Did you exercise the care? Did you read the act? Did you comply to the law? When these four questions are asked, the director must say somewhere like, now it's my responsibility.
Right. Uh, my next question. Now, sometimes we see there's this conflict, disagreements when the company is growing between the directors, sometimes about their responsibilities, right?
Yeah,
Maybe it's a verbal agreement at the beginning, like you do this, you do that, and maybe one person become extremely busy with some other work, and these two directors are working really hard. And when it comes to compensation, or some kind of uh, you are working towards getting a benefit, can you explain a situation like that?
yeah. I think I'll add you one more sort of a scenario to there where
Okay.
you have a conflict between directors and also you have a conflict between shareholders. That is the
Okay.
most common thing. Like in Sri Lanka, we
Okay.
fight like people like fight like crazy. It comes to things, right?
Okay.
Now,
Yes.
between conflict between directors can be sorted out easily because you can have a service level agreements to say, look, Amita, you are a director of the X company. This is your roles and responsibilities. So I've been given the responsibilities, right? So it's easy to sort the dispute between directors. End of the day, the majority wins the board of directors. You see, it's like a pyramid. I mean,
Yeah.
top is where the management, the board of directors. Bottom, that is the below part, is the shareholders.
Yes.
Ultimately, final control is with the shareholders.
True.
Actually, without them, without their backing, you can't control, you can't work and make your decisions. Basically, the management is responsible, but the backing is shareholders. If you don't have the backing, directors will not be able to be working there because they can be removed by shareholders. So
True.
ultimately, it's we keep a trust on directors. That's the
True.
concept. Like it says, shareholders think, look, I've been investing in this business. I don't have time to do this business. So you directors conduct the business. But our context is where I being a shareholder, I work as a director. So there's a different concept.
True.
Now, the biggest problem happens is between shareholders. I don't like
And
that
the
shareholder
director.
making decisions. So to avoid it, we recommend especially for the friends concerned, have a
Yes.
shareholders agreement because it's very difficult, Amita, to solve a problem when the problem actually faced. Like they don't know, they can't say. People come and say, Dushka, I can't speak with my friend. He's a good friend of mine. I can't say to
Yeah.
leave. I make him get out from the business, but with him I can't do the business. They're like stuck,
Yes.
right?
True.
So
True.
one of the key things is biggest challenge the business I have faced is disputes between the shareholders, which should actually it will be reflect in the director board as well, because since they are the same people who works in the board of directors. But we need to we have to have a different topic for that, how to resolve shareholders dispute. And that's a different I would say our topic.
I
But
can see. I can see. We are
very
going for another episode on a different day.
very simply, I would say have a shareholders agreement to say how the shareholder ABC works together. If A is basically involved in what's their role, if there's a locked-in period, if there are certain kinds of a restrictive of the transfer of shares, those transfers, because at the end of the day, shares are the ultimate control of the business. So restrictive on certain provisions, and mainly I've always says exit. This is not like where if people can't work together, there must be a room for exit also.
Yes.
ABC is there. If C wants to migrate, like come on, like we can't stop him migrating from Sri Lanka. So we have to say how. I mean, AB might not like to work fully, and because they're the one who taking benefits. The shareholders are the one who take benefits, right? So it must have exit provision. So in the event of exit, it must be offered to A and B first, and this way we evaluate the pricing of the shares. So those can be sorted out. And
Mhm.
mainly between directors, I mean, you asked about the the benefit or the salary. We
Yes.
call it
Yeah.
remuneration. Assume that ABCs might not working, the way that they're contributing equally. So you can
Yes.
always say, look, A, the service agreement is that you as a director work on these categories. So you are working as a director. So your remuneration is X amount. So if C is not contributing, you can have a less amount. But that will be a cost for the company. That will be a cost for the company. Another concept is the CEO. Like for example, CEO is not a board of directors role; it's a
Yes.
employment role.
Yes.
So we have a situation like one of a CEO file action against his company. He's a shareholder, he's a director, he's an employee. He filed against his company. So to understand, it's very important to know what's your role. It is
True.
what is not what you think. What is your role on paper? What is your role?
Amazing. So I think we chose the topic, the role of a director in a private limited company. I mean, amazing, Dinushka. I mean, I don't know. You are good to become a teacher also. So simple. So let's say hi to few of our friends. We have Chintaka. Glad to hear these type of conversation. Very important and informative. And then we have Jeswin Raj saying hi. We have Gayan, who was my previous show guest. We talked about managing your finance by using budgeting techniques at home. So Gayan says, hi, Amit and Denuka. As usual, I missed the first half of the valuable topic. Never mind, I'll go through the YouTube. Regards, Gayan. Gayan, thank you very much. See, those who come to my show, to watch and to comment, beware, you could be the next guest. This is how I get told of people, hey, this guy is very interested in what we discuss. Okay, let's see his specialty or her specialty, and next day the person will be in my show. Okay, so again, for the benefit of everyone who has joined, we are talking about the role of a director in a private company, and we are talking to Mr. Dinushka Madagoda, attorney at law, ELO Chambers, managing partner, and expert in the subject. He loves to talk about the subject. I think it doesn't need any pre-preparation and all, because this is what he does every day, day in, day out. Yeah. So we have okay, one more visitor here. Tisal says interesting. Yeah. So my next question, I have prepared some questions. So some of them you have already answered. So, what mistakes directors do while operating a company where they could land in a legal dispute as
Right.
directors? Not, let's leave the shareholders aside
Yeah.
for a minute.
So basically, the directors, what I've noticed, one example that I can give, I'll give you a couple of examples. The first example I can give you is especially the dealing with finances of the company. Now, if you're a director of a company, when a company wants to open up bank accounts, you need to be mindful of what types of bank accounts the company is requesting. For example, types of accounts like savings account or a current account. Those are the main
Yes.
common accounts a corporate can maintain.
Yes.
Savings account, of course, if something goes wrong, it's from the funds that you have. So your
Yeah.
responsibility will be limited. As directors, when the bank company is requesting for a current account, I've seen a lot of directors do not have the discipline of maintaining proper financing, and the checks can be defaulted. In such context, the first example is you should know people who are authorized to engage these transactions. For example, the secretary has to pass a resolution to say we supposed to X bank in the branch decided to account and current account, and the operating operated given by the instructions given by director A or B is sufficient to manage the business. This is the decision. So assume that there are three directors A, B, C. So the operating instruction was either A or B. Now C
Yes.
says, look, I have some work. I can't take
I'm busy. I
responsibility.
have
You all do.
enough
I'm
work.
busy.
You guys
You give
manage.
me, I'll sign it. That's it. The resolution they sign. The context is where A and B is working. Like they are good friends, right? But the problem is, assume that your business basically didn't work, and you give checks, and it get defaulted. So who's responsible? It is not the A and B. A, B, C, because all are directors.
Yes.
Then you can't say, look, I was not aware, I was not known about this fact. No, you can't say that because you have said, look, A and B is able to either M of will be able. Now A and B also can't say if A make a mistakes, still B is responsible. So it's very important that you take some financial decisions. You have to make sure that people main because I've seen like they checks return and if someone action, it's a magistrate court case. It's like you had to go to courts because you had
Yes.
been given you had to take a statement to the police station. Not nice. Then you can't say,
Yes.
look, I can't focus business. Of course you can't focus business because you are in a criminal case now, right? So that's
I
first
mean,
example.
this is a classic example because you tend to think because you are just signing the check, A and B is signing the check, so it is their responsibility. I am C, but I'm a director, and I forget that I'm also responsible.
Yes, it's
Classic.
just simple things, but those mistakes is key for them. Like you can't say no, and I've seen a lot of businesses because of this right now. I mean, like Sri Lanka is going through a crisis,
True.
and in a crisis, you are starting up, and you have a checkbook, and you think, look, I can. It's like I can write whatever the amount. I mean, don't. You have to be disciplined enough to make sure that you read all the documents before you sign. I have seen like some directors say, do whatever they. You can't say whatever the way you like. You have to know the responsibilities of whatever the way that works to you, right? That's the first example. The
Yes.
second example that I can give, like common, I'm using. There are lists like I mean I have a list of like more than 200 incidents that I can give you. Like here's a book. I
Okay.
can't do it now, but I give few which I've seen in common.
Okay.
Second thing is each company you have to file Form 50 annually. Right, the first year of incorporation is not required, but from there you have to have the annual general. You have to have a conduct annual general meeting.
Yeah.
Technical, forget about it. But whatever the short terms, after first year you have to file Form 50. Now it's a duty of the company to file it. Right now, the fact is the register of companies. Some lot of companies don't file Form 15. Who cares? This is a government. So no one takes action. Like it's serious. Now I told that you need to comply with the Companies Act. There's a duty.
Yes.
The
Yes.
Companies Act says the company must comply, and all the officers who does not comply can be charged with 50,000 rupees. Fine. So directors, not knowing, like they say, look, the fact is the register of companies might not take action against you. Doesn't mean that you are not liable.
Yes. You are liable.
It's, you are liable. Like you have to make sure that you comply with this Form 50. You file the Form 50. So a lot of companies I've seen do not file Form 50 on due date. The
So
reason,
it's
like there
the
are couple,
now what happens? Is it the shareholders? Is it the directors?
it can be
Who
the
is
directors.
responsible? It's the
Directors.
directors.
Yes. Because they are the one who read, they are the one who should comply to the Companies Act and the Article of Association.
So the Anushka, I don't want to be a director anymore.
Being a director is a challenge. That's what I'm saying. You director is a challenging role. I mean, it's a very interesting role. Like I have a company. Like personally, I have a company. So you being a director means that you're a decision maker, right? So in my I have a company. So I took seriously on my decision, but I know the repercussions of not making right decision. End of the day, the directors are the one who take responsibility. If good happens, the directors will be recognized. Yes, they are the one who are the manage decisions. But unless you are a shareholder, what being a director is a bit of a question mark. Unless you get a good kind of a compensation to be a director. So, but end of the day, I would encourage because our role is to be how to work as a good director. So how you can be like you can read these acts, you can say, you can ask, you can approve it, and you say what are the mechanisms that ABC is doing. If you're C, you can ask what is your mechanism that you do. So what is the control test that you do? Like you can ask simple questions. And this idea of separate your friendship from a business environment is very important. You're doing a business. It's money and cents, and you have to know the discipline of separating friendship and company. Like, you look for the legal aspect. At the end of the day, you can't go to courts and say, "Look, I trust A and B. I'm sorry, Your Honor, I didn't know about." You can't say. Court
But
say yes, I understand.
unfortunately,
I'm sorry, but you are guilty.
unfortunately, most of the time, you end up losing the friendship over a business.
Of course. I think because of non-compliances. Because if you comply and if you put real, when you're serious about it, then this situation might not even come. So that is the
True.
first example I gave you. And I gave you
Yes.
the second example also, the 450. The third
Yes.
example, most of the time, financial statements. How many companies do the financial statements? I'm just telling you. They don't do it due time. So what the companies access is within 6 months from the balance sheet date, due date, like sheet date, you have to create the financial statements. So it's the duty of the auditor to make sure that the audited financial statements are done. But you have to make sure as a director whether the audited statements are there.
Yes.
Assume that if you are not doing it, who's responsible? Still the director is responsible. What is the fine? It can go up to maximum of 100,000, right? I
I
just
think
gave you
I
a
think I
clue.
need to
Our
start
word
adding
is,
all those.
Avita, if we go with this fine structure, people will never be directors, right? So good thing is this. No one, I mean, the register of companies or Sri Lankan court system, like they don't take action. Because why? If the register of companies start taking actions, it's going to be different context because it's a lot of people are defaulting these functions. It's
True.
very important for our viewers to understand it can be you sometimes, it can be selectively, you may be selected. So that why you take that risk when you can avoid that risk? I mean, simple steps like you do proper. It's not a very hard, difficult thing. I mean, like to get a Companies Act, you don't need to be a lawyer. I would say when we go with the vesting of share schemes, like the foreign companies, it always says I felt foreign shareholders, like discussion that we they are smarter than lawyers. They are
Oh,
very smart. They read papers. They are the detail. That's the level of like when it comes to the vesting, like the serious level of investment comes from foreign companies. The investors knows about it. Directors knows about it. I have seen very few directors at that kind of detailed understanding about the provisions. They sometimes foreign directors read Sri Lankan laws and says, "Look, I'm concerned about these provisions." That takes it. That shows. This is not the complexity of law. It is attitude. Sorry to
it is
say,
attitude.
attitude. It's complete, and you
Attitude.
can't. I don't find fault of this. This law is not complex. I mean,
Yeah.
if you can speak Sinhala, if you can read English, you get the act. Get a book. It's like few pages, but you can read. It's not a very whoever who is a director says I don't have time of 1 hour, 2 hour to sit and read. I'm not thinking it's worthy to be a director. To be very frank, to say, I mean, come on.
True enough.
Sorry
Like,
to say
you
that,
can't.
but this is my personal feeling.
No, no, no. I'm 100% with you. Suppose if you want to drive and you want to get a license, you should know
Yeah,
the basic traffic rules.
yeah.
It's simple as that. Yeah. But
You
I
have to.
mean, yeah. So this is why I bring people like you who would come and teach everybody. At least now, I'm sure, just
I know
like me,
people
you
gonna be
thought,
angry at
okay.
me after telling.
No,
They are.
Dinushka. Now I'm
But I
thinking,
felt it.
okay, I
Yeah,
will get the Companies Act and then I'll leisurely read it, right?
yeah.
Because it's not only about where I am a director today. It is also about my future involvement with various other organizations. I'm sure I will be invited to become a director to invest in a company. Now, this discussion would help me to learn about everything by now itself. So by the time when these opportunities are coming my way, I'm kind of ready. Yeah. So let's say hi to few of our friends, and then we have Tanuka who says awesome, and Shehan says hope to hear about shareholders in the future discussion. We have Kapila thumbs up. We have Gayan saying again, directors are usually optimistic people, and that helps to overcome the explained risk, isn't it, Dinushka? What do you think, Dinushka?
I
He
think
says
that's. I mean,
directors are optimistic.
yeah. So they have to like it's their driven the inspirations to make decisions, right? So whole my value system always for me is that one cares about the business. Like if I'm interested about my business, it is my duty to know the legal aspects of it so that I'm going to safeguard not only myself but also the business. Because it's very important that you learn something and you apply it to your business. especially the legal, so that you can say, auditors also look, please make sure that you provide this information on periodically, that there is a compliance, it automatically comes. Now,
Yeah, and
I
then
think,
the employees who are working, I mean, even their lives, their livelihood also is in trouble if company is getting into a legal problem.
yes, definitely. And also, it's unnecessary because one of the key thing is precaution is better. Everything precaution is very important for a business. So you know the compliances. Am I compliant? If you have exam, very checklist, small checklist. I have employees. Am I compliant with the employees? EPF, ETF, tools. I have a tax file. Do I pay taxes on time? If I'm not paying taxes, am I filing tax return on time? Simple, right? And I have a suppliers. Do I have a supply agreement that safeguard myself? So direct is your responsibility to make sure that
Yes.
I have.
You
I
never
have.
think like that.
Yeah, we have to ask this question because it's very important to safeguard the best interest of the company. Am I taking the best interest of the company? Am I disclosing the internal interested matters to the board? And I'm not taking decisions bad for the company. These are the yardsticks. Directors must always ask. So if you're a director, ask few questions. It's always when you know the subject, your role as a director, you automatically tend to make sure that your decisions are responsible. So next time when a board bank comes, bank account opening comes, you will always ask, what's my responsibility? So what's
True.
this fund going? So you ask, like you have a question, you have a right to ask.
Ask. True.
So because you are a director, you have a right to ask. If you do not exercise your right to ask from the parties, you are automatically surrender your duties when it comes to a issue of a dispute. So it's very important that you exercise this dialogue. Ask what it is, why responsibilities is, spend some time. Few things. It's not a much complicated. I would say very few tips. I mean, like any legal context, very technical, but few things. If I have an employee, am I paying EPF? That's the first question. Tax critical because these are not civil matters. These are going to be criminal nature because if you will have a fine, you have a penalty. The word fine penalty means there's a criminal. That's the nature is criminal. Between civil, of course, we can have a settlement, but criminal, it's not nice for director, but have to face it. So avoid those. Key thing is compliance as concerns. I would say a lot of companies are not compliant to the labor laws. That's number one. I've seen, I've noticed it. The second thing is tax. I think those are the two things which is not, but this is a part of director's role to make sure those are compliant.
True. I
Very
mean,
simple.
you actually answered my next question, like how could a director use these regulations and laws for the benefit of himself or herself and the company? And if you really look at, you don't have 101 things to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's less than 10 things that you have to be mindful
Few,
of.
very
Very
few,
few.
very few. Because if you are ongoing businesses, all what you have to see is whether you do these things and then how am I to do it. And for example, I'm saying like it's important for directors to see my statutory obligation. The word statutory obligation is nice. It says it is not. I don't know. I don't like it. I was not aware of it. Those are
I
not
was not told.
excuses.
I was
I
not
was like,
told.
I was not told. When it comes to statutory obligation, the law says this is what you should do. This is what will happen if you don't do it. You have to wear a helmet when you driving a this thing, riding a motorcycle. I don't know. That's not an excuse. Likewise, statutory obligations, the intention is not required. I was thinking good for the company. I was thinking the best for the employees. Employee
Mm.
said, look, don't deduct my EPF, ETF. Employee gave me affidavit not to deduct EPF, ETF. I have this letter. I did good faith. I paid him the EPF, ETF amount also because he's saying he wants not to pay the EPF, ETF. Now he says the employee goes to the labor department and say, this company didn't pay me EPF, ETF. You go to the labor department and say, look, there is affidavit. Statutory
Won't
obligations.
work.
You don't, whether you like it or not, whether they give consent to do that, immaterial. So we always, A director listen to the statutory obligations. Other things, obligations, like you can have a moral obligations. You break some moral obligations, you can say, look, it's different. So statutory
True.
obligations, sorry, comply. It's a role.
Amazing.
It's a role of a. I mean, it's a role of a director. Comply.
Yes. Today, today's topic, the role of a director of a private limited company, and here you are giving a very specific, and it's so clear, crystal
Yeah.
clear. Yeah.
Thank
Okay.
you.
So we have come to the last question. Uh, um, Looking at the uh, most successful private limited companies, what kind of conduct have you noticed in the directors? Like, I know you just mentioned some of them, but then now we have been talking about how directors could get into trouble, how shareholders and directors will have conflicts. But I'm sure among all these troublesome organizations, you also come across great organizations
Yeah,
run
yeah.
by, so what are the common things that you experience in them?
Most of the directors have service level agreements. They have a service agreement. They know what their role and responsibilities on a written documentation. And most of the organizations have a corporate governance. Small private companies, I have not seen corporate governance at all. Some medium companies, I have seen corporate governance. Successful organization has a corporate governance policies. They always try to separate person's duties with another governance level. So you always cross check. There is always a reference, and they're very professional. They know what their duties. They have a set of rights attached to those duties. They have sufficient remuneration for their duties that they render. That's one side. Second side is a strong shareholders backing. Because when an organization grows, the biggest problem is people try to see, why do I need A? Now BC is like doing the work. Why do we need A? Now I want to remove A. This is the biggest mistake I've seen when people are growing, try to remove people. And they create an utter mess. Successful organization, whereas create strong shareholders agreements. So create so strong shareholders agreement, make them get new shareholders, able to get new investors, able to strategize partners. So they create provisions. They have provisions for employee share option plan. So what they are doing is they grow, they make their employees shareholders of the company. They make strong, they create synergy between the culture. Love to see those companies which basically create from, I mean, zero to great organization purely by placing a nice legal framework which really helps for them to scale it, so that it's discipline and the framework. When they know what they're supposed to do, and when they know if they are not doing supposed to do, what's going to be their repercussions, things are very clear. You don't have to come and say, sit, we go for a coffee, we'll discuss nothing. You come on, this is your KPI. Even that's very clear. Employee share option plan. Employees who work for more than 5 years get this number of shares, very clear. X category get this number of shares, very clear. The parties are agreeing, the employees knows. So how beautiful it is. The entire organization comes from employee to director to shareholder, aligned to organization, knows what their roles, what their entitlements. So they work, so it becomes a family. So I think the moment companies started learning about the benefits of corporate governance, how it really helps, and most importantly, when you have a strong framework, this is a very important aspect of giving a slow. It
Yes.
will prevent non-competition. So I work for 10 years and I'm just leaving the company and taking my all best clients and I'm starting a new company will prevent non-competition, non-solicitation, prevents when you have a strong shareholders agreement because they can't just leave because A, B, C together works it. Now C cannot leave and start its own like with all my existing customers. It's fair, right? For AB will what's going to happen for the AB? What's going to happen for the AB's employees? So when I say shareholders agreement, it's not about the rights and responsibilities, but also its framework in a way that helps the organization because the shareholders agreement There will be three parties. The company is a party, and
Yeah,
the direct, I mean, shareholders going to be parties. Sometimes when it comes to investment based shareholders, you have a key CEO can be a party to shareholders because he can be the driven force, like the founder.
true,
So nicely you blend it in a way that organizations sustain because they know their responsibilities. One of the biggest problem I've seen fail, the successful business which failed, right? There was not an exit provision.
mm,
There was a dispute between founder and the investor. A brilliant product. I can't name it. A brilliant product. Founder didn't like it to work with the investor. ₹1 million investment, like it's millions. They said, look, I don't do it. The investor said, no, you have to do it. So how can you force someone to do it if someone is
yes,
not doing it? He crashed his business. Ground. Invest
because
lost.
there was no exit
No exit
clause.
provision. There was no proper exit provision. They were bragging about the exit and they lost millions. Like he showed me some equipment's worth millions. So you think of the other things because he can't use it because it's invested funds. Apple Mac books like in a garage. I don't know. It's like I don't think it can be used even.
Yeah,
Sad to say. Simple tools of understanding. You have to if someone is a director who's an investor, always think if a founder is not happy to deal with the business, let them go. Just don't try to hold it and you lose your money. Always
true.
have an exit provision so that look, this is how we exit, how the directors works. So I think I went beyond connecting some dots, but hope that I
No,
answered
no,
your question.
that's very important. That's very important. So now we have an invitation to do another session later about shareholders. Interesting
Lovely, lovely.
because sometimes you form a company after trying for a few months and then you see that things are working, traction, there's money coming. Let's form a company and you pay attention to rest of the things and then don't pay attention to somebody might say do this, and probably nobody will have a bad intention. Everybody is doing it with a very good intention, but they really don't know uh, what they do. So we have Sajeevan. Let's see what he says. uh, Okay, he says you can make anything complex in no time, but simplifying it takes a lot of experience and effort. Kudos to Dinushka for simple explanations of complex topics, and thank you, Amita, for taking up this topic. Yeah, even Sajeevan was a guest in my show. Like he talks about digital transformation and all that. So amazing. I mean, I really enjoyed that. Now, in the back of my mind, for your information, I know I have. Ignored to look at some of these documents what you said, or maybe I put my signature. Business is running, friendships and everything is going perfect, but I think I'm going to go back and check everything.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm sure everybody learned a lot. I think 1 hour is not enough. We have spent about, okay,
And I think
uh,
like
yeah,
questions of this nature will spark a lot of attention and also they are individuals for example I want to thank Chagi also we sometimes it's people the community it helps right so sometimes in my business transformation my flow transformation I think Shagi I must appreciate his support and guidance always phone call that's
he's
friendship.
an he's a very nice human being. So
Yes,
yeah, of course we both agree on that. So Dinesh, thank you so very much for coming today. I know you have a little
a pleasure.
kid and you have to
It's
go
a
home
pleasure.
early. Yeah, but you said no, Amita. We have been trying to do this for a while, and then you were busy and I was having other work, and then eventually finally we are here. But I can see that we are also leading to another discussion maybe at a later date, and then maybe a different but in the same field. We'll talk about something else. So I would like to thank everybody who joined us on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and on YouTube. And then a lot of comments, especially encouraging comments. I mean, these are the reasons why I'm continuing this. And then there are professionals like Dinushka who are willing to come in the night at 8:30. I run this at the most odd, weird time at 8:30 in the night. People ask 8:30. I say yeah, because people are relaxed at home. You can't be on the road and listening to this. So you want to have any final words to the audience?
I think it's all what I said. It- what amplifies for me is simple steps. You don't need to be complex. Simple.
Simple.
Ask few questions. What am I doing right? Am I reading enough before signing? Am I doing very few questions that I think ask those questions from yourself and spend time reading. I think very important aspects of a director is to read because decision makers need to read and you are not an employee of a company. You can hire employees. Their duties are different. We'll discuss separately about it. Your role as a director is to make decisions. So if you are making decisions, you have to read, look into the aspects. So that is why the company's access, you have to comply. I would say four things: comply to the Companies Act, comply to the Article of Association, act in good faith, do best interest for the company, standard of care is important, skill, diligence, and important when you are making decisions, and also you have a right to get advice. Take those things, make a good director. Thank you all very much. Thank you,
Thank
Amita,
you very
for
much.
inviting me also.
Yeah, I mean, this is a very special show because it is my 75th episode.
Yes.
And it's very much important to business. So that's the end of the role of a director in a private limited company discussion with our friend who is a top professional, uh, Tinushka Madagoda, attorney at law, also the managing partner of ELO Chamber. How can someone contact you? Come to
LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, come to
Yes.
LinkedIn inbox.
Yes. LinkedIn,
Yeah.
Dinushka Madhav, I think they can able to find it. Do you want to give my contact now? How does this work?
Yeah, I mean, it's
LinkedIn is
perfectly all
fine. I
right.
think yeah,
Yeah,
because
go ahead.
yeah, I mean, better would be the LinkedIn because I'm
Yeah.
like packed with my calls that I'm
Give me an
getting.
email. Give me an email.
Okay. So, Dinushka, Dinushka at
Yeah.
elochambers.com.
Let's put it here. Tell me whether it is correct.
Yes, Dinushka at elochambers.com. Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, if you want to reach out to Dinushko for anything, even for another discussion like this somewhere else, even though he's extremely busy, he has helped the community, especially the startup community, a lot, especially advising, sharing his knowledge. So it's great to bring him on board. He never said no, even though he was busy. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank
And
you. Thank you.
see you with another episode. And everybody, let's expect another professional next Thursday as well. Until such time, take good care of yourself. Good night.
Good night. Good night, all. Good night, Anita.
Good night.